Have you ever noticed that the more advanced we become, the lonelier we seem to get? We carry supercomputers in our pockets, speak across oceans in real time, launch spacecraft into the void of interstellar space, yet somehow we still can't seem to find peace within our own minds. We unlock the secrets of the atom, map the human genome, build artificial intelligences that mimic our thoughts, but we still struggle to understand ourselves. Isn't that strange? That amid all our progress, we remain mysteries to our own species? This paradox of advancement without anchoring, of movement without meaning, isn't just poetic, it's dangerous. Because for all the ways we've learned to harness the universe, we've forgotten how to listen to it. But sometimes the cosmos doesn't wait for an invitation. Sometimes it speaks loud enough to silence our chaos. On April 8, 2024, the skies above Earth will stage such a message. A total solar eclipse moment when the moon, tiny and dark and ancient, drapes itself across the brilliance of our sun and reminds us of how delicate and how precise the clockwork of our cosmos really is. And this isn't just another astronomical event for the textbooks. No, this one carries a whisper, a peculiar echo from 7 years ago, because if you trace the shadow path of the 2017 eclipse and overlay it with the one coming in 2024, something remarkable emerges, a great X marked upon the surface of the United States. Now, is that mere coincidence? Certainly you could say so. Geometry is full of crossings, or perhaps it's something else. A symbolic pattern left not by intention, but by alignmenta cosmic punctuation mark, not written for us, but discovered by us. And that makes all the difference, because what is science if not the art of noticing patterns? What is astronomy if not humanity's attempt to find meaning in the dance of shadows and light? You see, eclipses have always moved us not just physically, with tides and magnetism, but emotionally, spiritually, culturally. Ancient people looked up and thought the gods were angry. Some saw endings. Others saw beginnings. And though today we no longer fear that the sun will vanish forever, we are still, at our core, creatures of wonder. And wonder always leaves room for questions. So what might this celestial intersection mean not to the sky, but to us? Let's imagine this X as more than a crossing of light. Let's imagine it as a mirror. One arm stretching back to 2017, a year when the world seemed to fracture along new lines. The other, extending into 2024 year full of unknowns, of shifts, of decisions yet to be made, at the very center where those shadows intersect. That's the present moment. Our moment. You see, we often look at the sky to escape, but rarely do we look up to confront. This eclipse is not asking us to dream, it's asking us to wake up, because strange things are already happening. Not out there in the galaxies or black holes, but down here on Earth. In politics, in climate, in economics, in identity, and perhaps strangest of all, in how we define reality itself. Isn't it curious that while we've built machines to simulate entire worlds, many of us feel disconnected from the one we actually live in? We scroll endlessly through curated illusions, but when the sky performs its ancient ballet alignment of sun, moon, and earth, we are reminded this is real. This is not virtual. This is not manufactured. This is the cosmos itself, casting its timeless geometry across our living sky. And for a brief few minutes, nature pulls the curtain, shadows stretch, silence falls, and the universe, it seems, is whispering, "Pay attention." So we ask again, what are we paying attention to? Certainly the mechanics of it all are extraordinary. A celestial body 400 times smaller than the sun, positioned 400 times closer to Earth, just enough to block its light entirely. That ratio 400 to 1 feels arbitrary, and yet it's exact. Perfect enough to cast a total shadow, to plunge midday into a fleeting night. That should give us pause. Because in science, precision, this elegant, doesn't always imply intention, but it does demand reverence. We are, each of us, standing on a rock that spins at 1,000 miles per hour, hurtling around a star at 67, 0 miles per hour, inside a galaxy that drifts silently through a dark unknown. And still, the moon finds the perfect angle to interrupt the sun. That choreography should shake us not with fear, but with a kind of sacred humility. We did not plan this, but we are here for it. Now think, what else in your life aligns with such mystery and precision, yet escapes your attention? We organize our calendars, our deadlines, our economies, our beliefs all to the rhythm of artificial schedules. But eclipses, they ignore us. They arrive when they arrive. They do not wait. They do not rush. They do not care whether you're ready or distracted or lost in the noise of your to-do list. They simply come. And for a moment, everything stops. It's almost ironic. The most advanced civilization in human history must be reminded by a shadow to slow down and look up. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the strangeness isn't what's happening in the sky, but how much we've forgotten to feel the sky at all. So, yes, brace yourself, because something is indeed happening, but not in the way movies might suggest. No fireballs from space, no alien ships descending through clouds, nothing to sell, no climax to fear. Instead, what's arriving is a question written not in words, but in shadow and silence. The question is this: what are you doing with your awareness? You, this bundle of consciousness, temporarily housed in atoms borrowed from stars. You, with neurons firing like constellations of electricity. You, born of cosmic dust, asking, why am I here? As the sun disappears behind the moon. This isn't science fiction. This is science itself, inviting you to remember you belong to something vast. And yet, we're not encouraged to think this way often, are we? Society has a way of flattening wonder. It tells us that success is accumulation, that meaning is metrics, that stillness is weakness. But nature doesn't operate on that frequency. Nature doesn't care if you're verified, or trending, or busy, or broken. It's simply continuous sunrise after sunrise, orbit after orbit, waiting for you to notice. And when something like a total solar eclipse comes along, it's as if nature is saying, enough pretending, just look. Because here's a truth that doesn't make headlines. We are surrounded by miracles we don't understand because we stopped calling them miracles. The tides, the heartbeat, the migration of birds who read magnetic fields, the synchronization of fireflies who pulse as one, the moon covering the sun to the exact degree. None of these things are ordinary. They're just ancient, and perhaps that's the real strangeness that we live in a reality this rich and rarely feel astonished anymore. So if astonishment has become rare, then what exactly have we normalized? We've normalized distraction, disconnection, a kind of quiet disorientation where we live among algorithms more intimately than we live among stars. We look down more than we look up. We swipe more than we think. We react faster than we reflect. And in the process, we have begun to outsource our awe. But the cosmos hasn't stopped being wondrous. We've just stopped being still enough to receive it. And that is why eclipses matter. Not because they change the universe, but because they change us. At least they can. They interrupt the artificial continuity of human affairs. They remind us that we are participants in a cosmic system older than civilization itself. And that reminder, like the shadow of the moon sweeping across continensis, not metaphorical. It's physical. You feel it in your bones. You see it in your skin as the light dims and the temperature drops. It bypasses your intellect and goes straight to something more ancient in you. A knowing that you are part of this, that the earth is not a stage, but a participant, that you are not above nature. You are nature, awake, breathing, thinking. And so when the sun vanishes, even for a moment, your soul remembers what it means to feel small and safe in that smallness. Because being small in a vast universe doesn't mean being insignificant. It means being part of something you don't have to carry alone. It means being folded into a grand story one written in hydrogen and helium, gravity and fusion, dark matter and dream. Now about that X, when you overlay the eclipse paths of 2017 and 2024, They intersect, forming an X over a swath of American land. To some, it's geometry. To others, it's mythology. But to those willing to think deeply, it's a symbol. And symbols matter because human beings assign meaning to patterns. That's how we navigate reality. That's how we've always made sense of the unknown. So what does an X mean? Mathematically, it marks a crossing point of intersection. Spiritually, it's a gateway. Anthropologically, it's a decision point, an invitation to choose. A place where one trajectory ends and another begins. That's not superstition. That's semiotics. And in the language of the cosmos, these convergences are rare. They don't tell us what to believe, but they do tell us when to pay attention. The X marks not a destination, but a crossroad. One we didn't make, but now must navigate. Of course, to suggest that the universe offers invitations rather than commands us to adopt a different posture toward meaning. Not one of prophecy, but of participation. Not of mysticism, but of metaphor informed by pattern. And some thinkers, yes, even those outside the scientific community, have long considered that our outer world is but a mirror of the inner one. Some thinkers outside the traditional scientific community have speculated about a kind of planetary awakening, psychological or cultural shift in human awareness. While such ideas don't fall within the bounds of testable science, they reflect humanity's enduring urge to make sense of cosmic events in personal terms. And that in itself is a pattern worth studying. Not necessarily because of what happens in the sky, but because of what happens inside us when the sky does something we can't ignore. Now, as a scientist, I approach such claims with curiosity, not blind belief, not blind dismissal. And I would invite you to do the same. Because whether or not you accept the mechanics of her regression work, you cannot deny the depth of her question. Are we evolving, not just biologically, but consciously? And if so, what triggers evolution? Pressure, environment, mutation, but also alignment. Alignment in evolutionary biology happens when multiple traits or conditions converge to favor a leap, an adaptation, a necessary shift. In celestial terms, the eclipse is a literal alignment, sun, moon, and earth falling into a straight line. And in social terms, we too are nearing a moment of alignment. Think about it. Ecological systems are straining. Economic structures are wobbling. Social cohesion feels fragile. Artificial intelligence is rising. Mental health is in quiet crisis. Spirituality, once organized into institutions, is now scattering into personal quests. Everything is converging. And if you believe that consciousness evolves in the way species evolve, then you must ask, what trait does our current age favor? I would argue it favors awareness. Not just information, not just data, but awareness. The ability to hold complexity, to notice patterns, to connect dots, not just in spreadsheets, but in spirit. And that's where Dolores Cannon's vision meets astrophysical metaphor. Because when we witness an eclipse, when the great fire of our solar system is temporarily hidden by the lunar body, it's as if the universe says, look not at the light, but at what shadows reveal. And in that moment, we do not merely observe, we awaken, not to a new religion, not to an ideology, but to the ancient and observable truth that we are not separate from the cosmos, or the cosmos becoming conscious of itself. That's not a spiritual assertion, that's a material one. Every atom in your body was forged in a star. Your bones contain calcium from stellar explosions. Your breath recycles nitrogen once exhaled by trees and ancestors. You are scientifically a collection of matter and energy arranged in a temporarily sentient pattern, but that pattern, when it reflects upon itself, creates wonder. And from wonder comes responsibility. Because once you know you are part of the system, you are no longer a spectator. You're a participant. You see, the idea of a global shift off civilizations changing course is not new. History oscillates like a physical pendulum between periods of disruption and moments of discovery. And often, just before the tipping point, indicators of systemic stress become apparent. Shifts in climate, upheavals in politics, breakthroughs in technology. These are not just cultural footnotes, they're signals from a dynamic system nearing a new equilibrium. That's not a metaphor, that's a pattern. In systems theory used in everything from ecology to economics to weather modeling, there's a concept called the edge of chaos. It describes a tipping point between order and disorder, where systems are not collapsing but not yet stable. It's the zone of maximum complexity and maximum potential. Too much order, the system stagnates. Too much chaos, the system dissolves. But at the edge, that's where emergence happens. That's where breakthroughs take place. That's where a forest burned by fire suddenly becomes fertile, where a mind pressed by pressure creates symphony, where a culture stressed by contradiction births revolution. And now, here we are. Our world is more connected than ever, but also more fragmented, more informed, but more misled, more advanced, but more anxious. These contradictions are not signs of failure, they're signs of proximity to the edge. And what happens at the edge depends on us. Will we fragment or transform? That's the real meaning behind the sheaf you choose to see it. Not a warning, not a prophecy, a mirror that reflects a choice point, a convergence, a compression of timelines, ideas, fears, and hopes all arriving not by coincidence, but by accumulation. And we know what happens when systems accumulate tension. In tectonics, it's called an earthquake. In astronomy, a supernova. In the realm of human behavior, we might call this a societal inflection point a moment when established norms strain under new pressures, prompting shifts in thought, values, and institutions. But let's be honest, awareness doesn't always arrive gently. In science, discovery often follows disruption when old models no longer fit the data, and a paradigm shift becomes necessary. The same may be true for how we understand our place in the cosmos. A disorientation so deep it forces a new orientation. It demands that we unlearn before we learn, that we dismantle before we build. And if you feel uncomfortable in today's world, if you feel overwhelmed by the noise, the division, the contradictions good, that means you're awake enough to notice the system straining at its seams. Whether by coincidence or consequence, you're alive during a time of extraordinary transitions scientifically, environmentally, and culturally. That alone makes your attention and your participation scientifically relevant, because while it's tempting to see this eclipse as a spectacle out there, the truth is it's a metaphor for what's happening in here, in you. An eclipse is not just the alignment of planets, it's the temporary concealment of something immense, something radiant. It's the shadow that makes us look again. And in a strange, poetic way, isn't that exactly what personal transformation feels like? You don't awaken through ease. You awaken through interruption. Something blocks the light, something familiar disappears, something within you gets eclipsed, and you're forced to reorient. Not toward what is shining, but toward what has gone dark. And in that moment of darkness, the mind asks, what have I ignored? What light did I take for granted? What truth have I been orbiting without ever landing on? You see, personal change and cosmic events are not so different. Both require tension. Both require movement. Both require a pause in the ordinary flow so that something extraordinary can emerge. And here's where the paradox gets beautiful. The universe doesn't just revolve around us. It also reflects us. The eclipse, the X, the planetary alignment, it's not giving us instructions. It's giving us a mirror. Because if this is the moment where old systems collapse, it's also the moment where you ask yourself, what system within me is ready to end? If this is the moment where new paths must be chosen, then what path are you still afraid to walk? If the world is at a crossroad, then so are you. This is not a mystical declaration, it's an invitation. An astrophysical metaphor extended by the universe to every single human who looks up at that blackened sky and feels something stir. And what stirs is not fear, it's recognition. That you are not just observing the shift, you are part of it. You are part of the data, part of the momentum, part of the equation. And equations balance, they correct imbalance, they seek symmetry, they tell the truth. So ask yourself not someday, but now, what is being eclipsed within me that needs to reemerge? What old orbit am I ready to escape? What habits of voter assumptions are anchoring me to an outdated model of who I am in a world that has already moved on? Because if we are honest, many of us are still revolving around beliefs we've outgrown, still tethered to identities we inherited but never examined, still spinning around expectations that shrink us rather than expand us. But eclipses change orbits. They remind us that alignment is dynamic, that darkness is not the end, it's the portal. So then, what do we do with all this? After the eclipse passes, after the sky returns to blue, after the awe fades and the routine resumes, what then? Because reflection without action is stargazing without launching a telescope. Beautiful, but incomplete. And this, perhaps, is where modern society struggles most. We've become excellent at observing, at watching, reacting, commenting, but much less practice at integrating, at acting not out of panic, but from understanding. So how do we act in the wake of a cosmic message written in light and shadow? We turn to what has always illuminated the unknown: science, compassion, and curiosity. Science is not just a method of inquiry, it's a mindset, a commitment to truth even when it's inconvenient, a discipline that teaches us how to see clearly, to measure, to question, to revise. And in this age of misinformation, where narratives are manipulated and truths are fragmented, science becomes a form of moral clarity. It doesn't tell us what to believe, it teaches us how to know. But science alone isn't enough, because data without empathy is cold. Technology without compassion is dangerous. Progress without wisdom is collapse in disguise. That's where compassion enters. The ability to feel with not just for others. The recognition that just as the earth rotates beneath an eclipse, people move beneath burdens you cannot see. And if we're truly going to build a civilization that's worth handing to the next generation, then we must stop mistaking intelligence for superiority. The stars may not judge us, but history will. And finally, curiosity, the fuel of discovery, the antidote to fear. The reason we first looked up and noticed the moon covering the sun. Curiosity is what transforms a strange event into a sacred moment. It's what drives a child to ask why, and a civilization to send a rover to Mars. It's what keeps the light on inside you when the world goes dark. And it is our most human trait, because in the end, it won't be power that saves us. It won't be wealth. It won't even be knowledge. It will be the willingness to wonder, to ask better questions, to reach across divides, and to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. That's what the eclipse is really offering us. Not certainty, but an opportunity to become the kind of species that can survive its own genius. And so here we are at the intersection, not just of light and shadow, sun and moon, but of what we have been and what we might yet become. The X isn't just on the map. It's in your mind. It's in the questions you've avoided asking. It's in the beliefs that no longer serve you. It's in the choice between staying comfortable or becoming conscious. Because at its heart, an eclipse is a cosmic disruption, and disruption is the birthplace of transformation. But let's be honest, it's tempting to wait, to delay the internal reckoning, to say, I'll awaken when the world calms down, or I'll change when things make more sense. But here's the truth. The universe has never stopped whispering. The world doesn't calm down before you wake up. You wake up and then you bring calm to the world. This isn't about destiny. This is about participation. This is about remembering that you are not a spectator on Earth. You are a force within it. You are a vessel of perception, decision, and potential. Every second you breathe, atoms from ancient stars move through you. Every thought you think sends a ripple into the collective field we all share. And every act of courage, however small, shapes the gravitational pull of our future. So no, the eclipse won't solve our problems, but it reminds us that there's a universe out there operating with precision and indifference. And in the face of that vastness, we might better see what truly matters here on Earth. It will expose what's broken. It will illuminate what's possible. And in the moments of quiet, when day becomes dusk and shadows bloom across the earth, you will have a chance to choose, to align not just with the cosmos, but with your deeper nature. Because the strange thing isn't that the moon will cover the sun. The strange thing is that we still live as if we're separate from the sky that bore us. And that illusion is ending. So what now? Do we watch the sky, take a picture, and go back to sleep? Or do we recognize this moment for what it truly is, not a performance, but a conversation? One that's been unfolding for billions of years, long before language, long before history, and now it includes you. The universe is not distant, it is not indifferent, it does not judge, but it does respond to every action, to every thought, to every tiny, unnoticed moment of attention we offer to its endless unfolding. And in that awareness, something strange happens. Rather than searching the skies for signs tailored to us, we might recognize that our very capacity to observe and reflect is itself a remarkable outcome of cosmic evolution. We become the alignment. We become the crossing point. We become the generation that looked up not for distraction, but for direction. Because the real awakening isn't about escaping Earth. It's about realizing Earth was never separate from the stars. And neither are you. So, brace yourself, yes, but not for catastrophe. Brace yourself for clarity. Brace yourself for the truth of your own significance. Brace yourself for the ending of illusions and the beginning of responsibility. Brace yourself for the possibility that the most revolutionary thing you can do is to see clearly, because in an age of confusion, clarity is rebellion. And the eclipse, it's not a warning. It's a mirror. And when you look into it, may you see not just shadow or light, but the astonishing, undeniable truth that you are made of the same atoms forged in stars. That's not poetis, it's astrophysical fact. And when those atoms organize into a being that can reflect on its own existence, the universe is no longer just observe it self-aware through us. And strange though it may be, perhaps that is the most natural thing in the universe.